Hey gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Sylvion, another game from Shadi Torbey's Oniverse series. In a game of Sylvion, we're basically controlling an army of forest creatures who are all working together to defeat a ravaging fire that's going to try to overtake our forest. The main goal of the game is to survive all 4 of these decks, which contain all sorts of bad things for the forest, with our complete forest intact. So each of these 12 cards that makes up the border of the forest basically represents our forest health, and we need to have 12 bloom cards facing up at the end of the game in order to win. If even one of them is still burnt after we make our final in-game calculations, then the game is lost. It is also possible to lose the game if at some point during play all of these forest cards are overturned to their burned side. Every turn begins with the reveal of the top card of each of these elemental decks, and we'll need to take the consequences of whatever cards we draw. There are several different types of elemental cards that can affect your game. The most common type is just going to be one of these little fire elemental cards. All they do is come off the pile and start advancing towards your forest to try to burn down your trees. They range in value from 0 to 3 until you draw one of these blaze cards that causes the value of each of those flames to upgrade. So 1 will become a 2 will become a 3 will become a 4, and a 0 will become a 4. So even if a fire seems relatively harmless, it may not be depending on what comes next off of the deck. These other cards have other consequences. For example, this card will cause the fire to advance an extra step towards your forest on a given turn, so it makes the fire move faster. And then these cards cause you to discard from your hand or from your discard pile. You can either discard fewer cards randomly or make a choice but have to give up more cards. Once all the cards have been revealed and any special power cards have been resolved, then you move your flame cards 1 to the left. So the flames will always advance on a given turn. Once all that's happened, it's our turn to do something with the cards in our hand. Once it's our turn, we're going to draw 3 new cards from our reinforcement deck, and then we're going to see what we can do with what is in our hand. There are 3 main types of cards in the game for you to work with. One is fountains. Fountains are basically used as a shield against encroaching flames. For example, this one has a shield value of 3, so we could perhaps place it in front of one of the oncoming flames. Once a card like this is placed, then it will essentially put out any flames that approach it that are of a lesser value. So a 3 will beat a 2, this fire will disappear, and the fountain will remain. However, if this 2 is upgraded to a 3, then the fire and the fountain will cancel each other out, and then you get to draw a new card because you had to get rid of one of your fountains. Other cards in our hand include trees, which are basically used to rebuild the forest, especially when it takes damage and you lose some health. And we also have animal cards that have various powers. Doves allow you to eliminate the top card of each of the elemental decks when you play it, which is pretty cool. The owl allows you to draw extra cards. Squirrels allow you to have a little peek at cards that are coming next and work really well with the dove card in combination. Hedgehogs allow you to cancel out any particularly nasty cards that come off of the elemental decks that you don't want. And there are a few other really cool animals as well, including elephants and whales, which is improbable, but we're totally going to go with it. However, you might have noticed these little water droplets in the top left corner of each card, and that is because nothing is for free. Every card that you place out in your forest needs to be paid for with other cards from your hand. For example, this little fountain down here has a cost of 2, which means that I would need to discard 2 cards from my hand, perhaps these trees because we wouldn't need them yet, in order to pay for that fountain. And basically play will proceed like this, either until we manage to survive every single layer of elemental cards from these decks, or until the forest gets completely wiped out by the flames. So Sylvion is a fun tower defense game, but I've actually shown you the second part of the game first, because I wanted you to know what we were building towards. You might wonder, can this game stay interesting with the same combination of animals, trees, and fountains every time? And the answer is that it can, because you're going to draft your deck before the game starts, which means that you'll be playing with different cards every single time you break out this game. Drafting in a game of Sylvion has a nice set pattern. You're going to summon new cards, and then recruit one of the stacks, then you're going to summon again, and then one of those stacks is going to desert. So let's say that we started to draft. I'll draw 4 cards. And then I'm going to get to recruit one of these 4 stacks. So let's say that I decide that I want this high value fountain, because that looks pretty good to me. Then what's going to happen is that we are going to summon creatures again. this time, I don't get to recruit a stack right away. What's going to happen is that one of them is going to desert. And we determine that by drawing off of the tree deck. These are the same cards that represent our health once we start the battle phase of the game. So let's draw it, and our number is 1, which means that the 1 pile has deserted and these cards are completely removed from the game. Then we'll draw again, and choose again which stack we'd like to recruit. There can't be more than 4 cards in any of the stacks, so you can't just hope that one will build up and get really, really big. It's usually best to grab one quickly if there's a couple of things in it that you really want. So for example, I'd like these doves. I would grab this stack, and then the process would continue. Typically, the drafting phase will end when you run out of cards in this deck. Once you do that, any Sylvan cards that are left over will be removed from the game, so get while the getting is good. Once you have a complete deck of Sylvan cards, then you're going to go to battle, which is what I showed you in the first part of the game overview. As is typical of Oniverse games, there are a couple of expansions in the box. One is called Extraordinary Feats and Betrayals, where you have betrayal cards that cause you some extra losses in the game, but you also have extraordinary feats that give you special powers. Plus, there are some additional win conditions to the game, which means that if you want to try for a different kind of in-game goal, you can. There's also an expansion called the Elements, which adds some extremely damaging weather events to the game, but also gives you these geyser cards that can wipe out quite a few fire elementals all at once. So now for some final thoughts. Overall, I really like Sylvion. I particularly enjoy tower defense games, and I really like the way that Sylvion combines drafting, where you choose the cards that'll go into your deck, with the actual tower defense phase in the second part of the game. Because you draft your deck, it gives you a really good combination of control, because you are choosing to an extent what's in there, but also variety, because you can't control exactly which cards are going to go into your deck. This means that even if you have some preferred strategies, each game is going to feel a little bit different, and you're going to have a little bit of a different configuration of cards at your disposal. I also like the strategic variety among the cards that you can put into your deck. Each animal card has interesting powers that can do something really different for you in the game, and that could work well in combination with another card in your deck. So I really appreciate the ability to set yourself up for some cool combos during gameplay, because I find that very satisfying. I also tend to like games where you pay for cards by discarding other cards in your hand, because that adds an extra layer of choice to the game. Overall, I would say that Sylvion is the Oniverse game that has the most choice in it, and for that reason, I really, really appreciate it. Sylvion does also have a couple of potential issues. The one that's the biggest concern for me is that I kind of feel like Sylvion is either too easy of a game or too hard, and that it's very difficult to set the difficulty correctly. When I'm playing the normal game, because I've gotten to the point where I know what cards I want to draft, I tend to win. It is very unusual for me to lose at this point a normal game of Sylvion. It's always possible for the cards to come out in some really bad combination that wrecks you, but typically speaking, while your earlier games may have been more difficult, once you learn how to use all of the different cards and their powers, you pretty much know what you're doing, and it's just a matter of figuring out the best way to deploy your cards, which is satisfying, but you don't always have that nail-biting tension of wondering if you're going to win. Fortunately, it is absolutely possible to make a game of Sylvion more difficult, but sometimes when you do that, then the game becomes blisteringly hard, and I don't mind that either, actually, but if you're looking for a happy medium, then this game may pose some issues for you. The only other drawback I can really think of is that Sylvion's just got a little bit more to it in terms of setup and time to play. So the other Oniverse games, in my opinion, are a little shorter. They take up a lot less table space, and they don't take as much time to set up. So Sylvion is a little bit more of an investment. So if you're looking for a really small box game and then you pick up Sylvion, you may be surprised with how meaty it actually is. And of course, that meatiness is something that I like, but you have to be sure that that's what you want when you pick up this game. So overall, Sylvion is a game I really like. It's a long-standing member of my board game collection with good reason, and it's one that I still like to pull out a few times a year and have a really nice time with because I enjoy it. So for that, I give it an 8 out of 10 and a Dice Tower seal of approval. Happy gaming!
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.